ditched on her wedding day. The cathedral bells were still echoing when her world collapsed. Lena Hart stood at the altar, her fingers trembling around a bouquet she had practiced holding 100 times in the mirror. Ivory silk brushed against her legs, the dress heavy with dreams she had stitched together over years of sacrifice. Sunlight filtered through stained glass windows, painting the marble floor in soft colors that mocked the storm gathering inside her chest. 200 guests sat frozen in their pews, their whispers held back by shock, anticipation hanging thick in the air. Then the words came. "I can't do this," Ryan Whitmore said quietly, but the cathedral's acoustics carried his voice like a verdict. "I'm sorry, Lena. I just can't." The silence that followed was crueler than any scream. It pressed down on her shoulders, stole the air from her lungs, and turned her knees weak. For a moment, Lena wondered if she had misheard him, if this was some strange rehearsal gone wrong. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw relief. Not heartbreak. Not regret. Relief. Her entire body went cold. Only 30 minutes earlier, she had been smiling at her reflection in the bridal suite, adjusting her mother's old pearl earrings and trying to calm her racing heart. She had thought her nerves were normal. Every bride felt this way, she told herself. She never imagined the fear she felt was her instincts warning her. The door had opened without a knock. Margaret Whitmore stepped inside like she owned the room, her designer heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, her navy suit crisp, her expression sharp enough to cut glass. She smiled, but it never reached her eyes. "Lena dear," Margaret said smoothly, closing the door behind her. "We need to talk." Something about the tone made Lena's stomach twist. "Is everything okay?" Lena asked, forcing politeness as she turned from the mirror. Margaret placed a thin folder on the table with deliberate care. "That depends on how realistic you're willing to be." Lena opened it with shaking hands. Inside were printed bank statements, student loan records, employment details, even photos of her small apartment above a bakery on the east side of town. Each page felt like another slap. 46,000 in student debt, Margaret recited calmly. A rented one bedroom. A used car. And a job that, while respectable, is limiting. "I'm a childcare assistant," Lena said, her voice barely steady. "I help raise other people's children. I work hard." Margaret waved a dismissive hand. "Hard work doesn't equal status. Ryan comes from a family with expectations. Influence. Legacy. He needs a wife who elevates him, not one who reminds people where she came from." The words burned. "My parents were teachers," Lena said quietly. "They taught me values. Kindness. Responsibility." "How charming," Margaret replied coldly. "But charm doesn't open doors in our world." She slid a check across the table. $50,000, Margaret said. "Enough to clear your debts and start over somewhere appropriate. All you have to do is walk away. Today." Lena stared at the check, her chest tight. "You want me to cancel my wedding?" "I want you to spare us all future embarrassment," Margaret said. "Ryan deserves better. Someone from his circle." "And if I refuse?" Lena asked, her hands clenched into fists. Margaret leaned closer, her smile disappearing. "Then things may become difficult. References vanish. Opportunities dry up. Reputations can be questioned. I'd hate for your career with children to suffer because you made an emotional decision." That was the moment Lena understood. This was not a request. It was a threat. Now, standing at the altar, Lena realized Ryan had never chosen her. He had simply lacked the courage to say no, until his mother made the decision for him. "I'm sorry," Lena said aloud, her voice steady despite the tears burning her eyes. "The wedding is cancelled." Gasps rippled through the crowd. She placed her bouquet gently at the altar and turned away, walking down the aisle alone as whispers followed her like shadows. She didn't look back. She didn't want the last memory of this place to be his mother's satisfied expression in the front row. Outside, the sky opened up. Rain poured down in sheets as Lena stepped onto the cathedral steps, her dress soaking through almost instantly. Her carefully styled hair fell loose, mascara streaking down her cheeks. She stood there, numb as guests hurried past her, avoiding eye contact, unsure whether to offer pity or pretend they hadn't witnessed her humiliation. She had nowhere to go. Her apartment lease had ended. Her belongings were already moved to the home she was supposed to share with Ryan. The future she had planned was gone, erased in a single sentence. A black car slowed at the curb. The window rolled down, revealing a man with calm, observant eyes and rain-darkened hair. He studied her for a moment, concern crossing his face. "Are you okay?" he asked. The question was almost absurd. Lena let out a shaky laugh. I'm standing in a wedding dress in the rain after being left at the altar. What do you think? Instead of recoiling, the man nodded slowly as if he understood pain well. I'm Daniel, he said. And it looks like you could use a ride. Somewhere warm. She hesitated. Every instinct told her to be careful. But something in his voice, gentle, respectful, made her pause. I don't even know where I'm going, she admitted. Then let's start with dry, Daniel replied. He stepped out, opened the door for her, and placed his jacket around her shoulders without a word. The simple gesture nearly broke her. She climbed into the car, the warmth hitting her like a wave as the door closed behind her. They drove in silence, rain blurring the city lights outside. Daniel didn't ask questions. He handed her tissues when her tears came, adjusted the heat when she shivered, and treated her like a human being, not a problem. At the hotel, Lena finally spoke. I wasn't good enough for them, she said quietly. Not rich enough. Not important enough. Daniel turned to her. People who measure worth that way usually fear what they can't buy. She looked at him, startled. You didn't lose your value today, he continued. You escaped people who never deserved you. Before she could respond, he hesitated, then reached into his pocket and handed her a card. I have a daughter, he said. She needs someone patient. Kind. If you ever want a fresh start, call me. Lena stared at the name printed on the card. Daniel Cross. Founder and CEO, Crosswell Industries. Her breath caught. As she stepped out into the hotel lobby, wrapped in a stranger's jacket and holding a future she never expected, Lena felt something stir beneath the pain. Oh, a house too big for grief. Lena Hart spent most of the night staring at the ceiling of her hotel room, listening to the hum of traffic outside and replaying every moment of the day in her mind. Sleep came in fragments, short, restless stretches interrupted by memories of the cathedral, Ryan's voice, and the cold certainty in his mother's eyes. Each time she closed her eyes, she felt again the weight of being judged, measured, and found lacking. Morning arrived quietly. Soft light slipped through the curtains, illuminating the wrinkled wedding dress hanging over a chair like a ghost of a life she no longer belonged to. Lena showered, letting the hot water wash away the rain, the tears, and the last fragile thread connecting her to the woman she had been yesterday. When she stepped out, wrapped in a towel, she noticed the business card on the bedside table. Daniel Cross. She picked it up, running her thumb over the raised lettering. A billionaire CEO didn't offer nanny jobs to strangers in wedding dresses. The offer felt unreal, too kind, too sudden, too hopeful. And yet, hope was exactly what she needed. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her heart skipped as she answered. Hello. Lena, came Daniel's calm voice. I hope I'm not calling too early. I just wanted to check on you. She swallowed. I'm managing. I'm glad, he said gently. I don't want to pressure you, but I thought I should mention that the position includes housing, healthcare, and flexible hours. If you'd like to meet my daughter before deciding, we could do that today. Housing. The word echoed in her chest. With one sentence, Daniel unknowingly solved the most terrifying problem she was facing. Lena closed her eyes. I'd like that, she said. I want to meet her. The Cross estate sat at the edge of the city, tucked behind tall iron gates and a winding road lined with old oak trees. Lena expected something cold and intimidating, a monument to wealth meant to impress and exclude. Instead, what greeted her felt human. The house was large, yes, but warm. Natural stone walls softened the modern architecture, and sunlight poured through wide windows. Flowers grew freely along walkways, not arranged for display but nurtured for joy. Daniel greeted her at the door wearing jeans and a simple sweater, looking more like a tired professor than one of the richest men in the country. Thank you for coming, he said sincerely. Olivia's pretending she doesn't care, which means she cares very much. Lena smiled nervously. I understand that feeling. Inside, the house told a story. Books filled shelves. Family photos lined the hallway. Birthdays, holidays, candid moments frozen in laughter. One woman appeared in many of them, her smile radiant and familiar. My wife, Daniel said softly, noticing Lena pause. Sophia. She passed away 2 years ago. I'm sorry, Lena said, her chest tightening. So am I, he replied. Olivia was with her when it happened. Lena's professional instincts stirred immediately. Trauma. Loss. A child forced to grow up too fast. Before she could ask more, a small figure appeared at the end of the hallway. Olivia Cross was 8 years old, but her eyes held an age far beyond that. She studied Lena with careful intensity, arms crossed, assessing. "You're the wedding lady," Olivia said bluntly. Lena blinked then nodded. "I am." "You look different without the dress," Olivia observed. "I feel different too," Lena replied honestly. That seemed to satisfy her. They sat at the kitchen table with warm mugs of cocoa. Lena didn't force conversation. She let silence exist, something children with grief often needed. Eventually Olivia spoke. "Dad says you help kids." "I do," Lena said. "Sometimes the best help is just listening." Olivia tilted her head. "Most adults don't listen." "I know," Lena replied gently. "But I try." For the next hour, Olivia asked questions. Not childish ones but thoughtful, precise questions about hospitals, fear, and whether sadness ever truly went away. Lena answered each with care, never sugarcoating, never overwhelming. When Olivia smiled for the first time, Daniel had to look away. The trial week began quietly. Lena moved into a guest room overlooking the garden. She learned Olivia's routines, her likes and dislikes, her moments of bravery and her moments of quiet withdrawal. She cooked simple meals, read bedtime stories, and sat with Olivia during nightmares without rushing or judgment. But not everyone welcomed her presence. The household staff watched her with thinly veiled skepticism. Whispers followed her down hallways. A nanny who arrived in a cab. A woman with no pedigree, no connections. One afternoon, Lena overheard two employees talking. "She won't last," one said. "Girls like her never do." Lena pretended not to hear. At a charity luncheon days later, the whispers grew louder. Daniel introduced Lena politely, but the women surrounding him looked her up and down, their smiles sharp and dismissive. "What does she do?" one asked, sipping champagne. "She works with children," Daniel replied. "Oh," the woman said, unimpressed. "How noble." Lena felt the familiar sting of being reduced, but this time she didn't shrink. She stood taller. Because something had changed. Olivia trusted her. Daniel respected her. And for the first time since the altar, Lena felt seen. That night, Olivia hugged her tightly before bed. "I hope you stay," she whispered. Lena held her close, heart full and aching. "I hope so too." The past comes knocking. Lena Hart had learned something important in the weeks since she arrived at the Cross estate. Pain didn't disappear just because life became more comfortable. It lingered quietly, surfacing in unexpected moments. When she passed a bridal boutique window downtown, when a certain song played on the radio, when someone mentioned the word wedding without realizing it still carried weight. But pain no longer controlled her. She had a purpose now, and in caring for Olivia she was slowly learning how to care for herself again. Olivia thrived under routine and honesty. Lena didn't pretend everything was fine. She acknowledged the sadness, the anger, the fear. And because of that, Olivia began to open up. "You don't treat me like I'm broken," Olivia said one evening as they worked on a puzzle together. "You're not broken," Lena replied. "You're healing." Daniel noticed the change immediately. Olivia laughed more, slept better, spoke openly about her mother without shutting down. And for the first time in 2 years, Daniel felt something inside his home shift, from survival to living. But outside the estate's gates, another story was unfolding. Ryan Whitmore's engagement collapse had not gone unnoticed. Society columns framed it as a mutual decision, carefully omitting the truth. Margaret Whitmore worked quickly, spinning narratives, protecting appearances. But whispers still followed the family. And whispers had a way of circling back. The invitation arrived on heavy cardstock. The Croswell Foundation annual charity gala. Daniel hesitated before mentioning it to Lena. "It's optional," he said. "You don't owe anyone anything." Lena read the card quietly. She knew what the gala represented: wealth, influence, judgment. The exact world that had rejected her. "I'll go," she said after a moment. "Not because I owe them. Because I don't." The gala was held in a grand ballroom downtown, chandeliers casting warm light over designer gowns and tailored suits. Cameras flashed. Laughter echoed. And the air buzzed with unspoken hierarchies. Lena arrived beside Daniel, wearing a simple navy dress she'd chosen herself. No excess. No attempt to impress. Her posture was calm, her expression composed. Then she saw them. Ryan stood near the bar, laughing too loudly. Margaret Whitmore was at his side, scanning the room with practiced calculation. Margaret's eyes landed on Lena. The smile vanished. For a split second, something like panic flickered across her face, quickly masked by disdain. She leaned toward Ryan, whispering urgently. He turned, froze, and went pale. "She's here," Ryan muttered. Margaret's lips tightened. "Ignore her." She's irrelevant. But Lena wasn't invisible anymore. People noticed when Daniel introduced her warmly. They noticed when donors listened attentively as she spoke, not about money but about children, trauma, and emotional care. They noticed when Olivia, dressed in a soft silver dress, proudly held Lena's hand. Margaret approached them, her smile sharp. "Well," she said coolly, "if it isn't Lena Hart." "Mrs. Whitmore," Lena replied calmly. "I see you've found new employment," Margaret said, her tone dripping with judgment. "Temporary arrangements can be so comforting after disappointment." Daniel's eyes hardened. "Lena is a valued part of my family." Margaret stiffened. "Family?" "Yes," he replied without hesitation. Ryan stared, disbelief etched into his face. The power dynamic had shifted, and everyone could feel it. Later that evening, a donor approached Lena. "You work with children affected by trauma?" he asked. "Yes," Lena said. "I believe emotional safety is as important as financial stability." The man nodded thoughtfully. "We're launching a foundation initiative. We need someone with lived experience and professional empathy. Would you consider consulting?" Margaret overheard. The realization hit her like ice water. Lena wasn't surviving. She was rising. That night, Olivia squeezed Lena's hand. "You were brave," she whispered. Lena smiled. "So were you." Across the room, Daniel watched them, something deep and unspoken growing in his chest. The past had come back, but it no longer held power. When the masks fell, the fallout from the charity gala didn't arrive loudly. It arrived quietly, through phone calls that went unanswered, invitations that suddenly stopped coming, and doors that closed with polite finality. Margaret Whitmore noticed first. At her private luncheon club, conversations stalled when she entered the room. Women who once sought her approval now smiled thinly and excused themselves. A longtime donor declined a partnership, citing a shift in values. A political ally postponed a meeting indefinitely. She told herself it was temporary. But deep down, Margaret felt something she had never allowed herself to acknowledge before. Fear. Because the truth, once whispered, had begun to circulate. Someone had talked. It started with a former assistant who remembered the threats. Then a nurse quietly confirmed that Lena Hart's sudden professional roadblocks hadn't been coincidence. Then another voice joined. And another. Individually, the stories were easy to dismiss. Together, they formed a pattern. One that pointed directly to Margaret Whitmore. Lena, meanwhile, was focused on Olivia. The little girl had nightmares again after the gala, not from fear but from uncertainty. Seeing people from the past stirred questions she wasn't ready to voice. "Do people ever say sorry when they hurt someone?" Olivia asked one night. Lena paused before answering. "Sometimes they do. And sometimes they don't. But that doesn't decide who you become." Olivia nodded thoughtfully. "Mom used to say that how people treat you says more about them than you." "She was right," Lena replied. Daniel watched this exchange from the doorway, his respect for Lena deepening into something more powerful, admiration rooted in trust. He hadn't said it aloud yet, but he already knew. Lena wasn't temporary. She was home. The board meeting at Crosswell Industries was scheduled for Thursday morning. Margaret Whitmore hadn't expected to be mentioned at all. But when Daniel stood at the head of the table, his expression unreadable, she felt a chill. "I want to address something important," he said. "Something that goes beyond business." The room quieted. In recent weeks, information has come to light regarding unethical interference in professional opportunities, specifically, intimidation and coercion used to control personal relationships. Margaret's breath caught. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "We cannot claim to support integrity while turning a blind eye to abuse of influence," he continued. "Effective immediately, Crosswell Industries will sever all partnerships associated with such conduct." Murmurs rippled through the room. Margaret stood abruptly. "This is outrageous," she snapped. "You have no proof." Daniel met her gaze steadily. "We do." He gestured and the legal counsel spoke next, calm, precise, devastating. "Documents. Emails. Statements. Timelines." Margaret's world collapsed in real time. By the end of the meeting, her resignation was not requested. It was inevitable. Ryan found Lena 2 days later. She was sitting in the garden with Olivia, helping her plant lavender. He looked smaller than she remembered, less confident, stripped of borrowed authority. "I didn't know," he said weakly. "About the threats. About what my mother did." Lena stood slowly. "You knew enough to walk away." Ryan swallowed. "I made a mistake." "Yes," Lena said gently. "You did. There was no anger in her voice. No bitterness. Just clarity. "I forgive you," she continued. "But forgiveness doesn't mean access." Ryan nodded, shame etched across his face. "I see that now." As he walked away, Lena felt something loosen inside her chest. Closure didn't come from revenge. It came from self-respect. That evening, Daniel joined Lena in the garden. "I should have stepped in sooner," he said quietly. Lena shook her head. "You did exactly what mattered, when it mattered." He hesitated. "Lena, I don't see you as an employee. Or a solution. I see you as someone who changed our lives." She met his gaze, emotions swirling. "I didn't come here to be saved," she said softly. "But I stayed because I was valued." Daniel smiled. "That's exactly why you belong." The life she was meant to live. Spring arrived quietly at the Cross estate. The gardens bloomed without ceremony, lavender and roses stretching toward the sun as if they had always known warmth would return. Lena Hart noticed these changes in the same way she noticed the changes in herself. Not suddenly but steadily, day by day. She woke each morning without dread. That alone felt miraculous. Olivia's laughter now echoed through the halls, lighter and more frequent. She slept through the night most days, and when nightmares came, they no longer carried the same fear. She talked about her mother openly, sharing memories without breaking apart. Healing hadn't erased the pain, but it had given it a place to rest. One afternoon, as Lena and Olivia baked cookies in the kitchen, Olivia looked up suddenly. "Do you think Mom would like you?" she asked. Lena's hand stilled. "I hope so." Olivia smiled. "I think she would. She liked people who stayed." Daniel watched from the doorway, emotion tightening his chest. He had spent years protecting his heart, convincing himself that stability was enough, that love was something he had already lived and lost. But Lena hadn't arrived demanding anything. She hadn't tried to replace Sophia. She hadn't tried to fix what was broken. She had simply shown up. Again and again. The foundation initiative Lena had quietly helped design launched that summer. It focused on emotional support for children facing trauma, grief counseling, caregiver education, honest communication. Lena wasn't the face of it by design, but people noticed her anyway. They listened when she spoke. They respected her because she spoke from experience, not ego. Articles praised the program's success. None mentioned the woman who had once been deemed unsuitable. Margaret Whitmore retreated from public life. Her influence dissolved without ceremony, replaced by silence. She watched from afar as the world moved on without her approval. And for the first time, she had no one to blame but herself. Ryan sent one final message months later. "I hope you're happy." Lena read it, then deleted it. She was. The moment came unexpectedly. It was a quiet evening. Olivia had fallen asleep early after a long day at school. The house was still, wrapped in soft golden light. Daniel and Lena sat on the terrace, tea cooling between them. "I never thank you properly," Daniel said. "You don't need to," Lena replied. "I do," he insisted. "You reminded us how to live. How to trust again." Lena met his eyes, heart pounding. "Daniel, I didn't plan for any of this." "Neither did I," he said gently. "But I know one thing, I don't want to imagine this life without you in it." He wasn't asking out of loneliness. He wasn't offering rescue. He was offering partnership. Lena took a breath. "I won't be with someone who sees me as a solution or a symbol." Daniel smiled softly. "I see you as my equal." That was enough. Their love didn't arrive with fireworks or headlines. It arrived with quiet certainty. With shared mornings and mutual respect. With Olivia's hand in both of theirs. With a home that finally felt whole, not perfect but honest. Months later, at a small ceremony in the garden, Lena wore a simple dress. No chandeliers. No pressure. No audience waiting for her to fail. Only people who loved her. As she stood there, sunlight warming her face, Lena realized something profound. She hadn't lost a wedding. She had escaped a life that would have shrunk her. And in doing so, she had found one that let her grow.